Imagine a world where every day was a battle against the unforgiving forces of nature. A world where survival was never guaranteed, where winter could stretch on for months, and where the land itself demanded constant effort and sacrifice. This was the Viking world. While today, modern comforts shield us from the struggle for survival, Vikings faced an existence where resilience wasn't just a choice, it was a necessity. Their homes, nestled in the cold, barren landscapes of Scandinavia, were built with purpose, designed to withstand relentless winters and the harshest storms. Unlike our insulated lives, where survival is abstract, the Vikings lived in a reality where every season, every harvest, and every hunt could mean the difference between life and death. In their world, strength wasn't just physical, it was mental, emotional, and deeply tied to their very identity. This was the crucible in which Viking resilience was forged.
The Viking diet. In the harsh Scandinavian wilderness, the Viking diet was shaped by the land itself, what they could hunt, gather, and cultivate. Their food wasn't fast or convenient. It was hard-earned and intimately tied to the rhythms of nature. Vikings relied heavily on grains such as barley, oats, and rye, which were grown in the brief summer months only to be stored for the long, grueling winter. Porridge made from these grains was a staple, a simple yet nourishing meal that could last them through the day. But grains alone weren't enough to sustain them. The Vikings were expert hunters and fishers, able to navigate icy waters and dense forests to procure meat and fish. Wild game like boar, reindeer, and elk were hunted, and fish such as herring and cod were caught in abundance along the coasts. Meat was preserved by drying, smoking, or salting, ensuring they had food to survive the bleakest months. Their reliance on dairy was just as crucial. Cheese, butter, and milk were not only sources of sustenance, but also of caloric density, offering much-needed energy for the physically demanding lives they led. Wild edibles, berries, herbs, and mushrooms also found their way into Viking meals, offering nutrients and medicinal benefits. Yet despite this diverse diet, food was never abundant. Every meal, every bite was the product of labor, skill, and a deep understanding of the land. Today, food is abundant, often taken for granted, delivered in plastic-wrapped convenience. Modern grocery stores, refrigerators, and fast food chains have disconnected us from the raw, resourceful methods of our ancestors. The Vikings, however, knew that survival depended not on convenience, but on their ability to adapt, make the most of limited resources, and thrive in a world where scarcity was the norm.
Breakfast in a Viking household. The Viking day began not with the click of a button or the hum of a microwave, but with the crackling of a fire and the steady motion of hands grinding grain. Breakfast in a Viking household was simple, yet vital. A humble bowl of porridge made from barley, oats, or rye. These grains, harvested in the short summer months, were stored carefully to last through the long, dark winters. The Vikings didn't have the luxury of fast, ready-made meals. Their mornings required work, grinding the grains, heating the water, and stirring the pot over the fire. For them, porridge was more than just a meal. It was a symbol of survival. The grains provided the necessary carbohydrates for energy, while the simplicity of the meal spoke to their resilience. There was no sugar, no spices, no convenience,
just the bare essentials, prepared with hands that knew the value of hard work. It was a start to the day that connected them directly to the earth and the seasons.
Contrast this with the modern breakfast, a meal that can be prepared in seconds, from cereal boxes, energy bars, or the push of a button. Our mornings are easier, yes, but they are also more disconnected. We don't experience the labor behind our meals. We don't feel the weight of the harvest or the cold of winter creeping in as we stir a bowl of oatmeal. And yet, there's an unspoken yearning for something simpler, a desire to reconnect with the rhythms of nature, to slow down and appreciate the nourishment of a meal prepared with intention. The Vikings, in their humble porridge, knew the power of simplicity in a world that demanded resilience. A day of hunting, fishing, and gathering. By midday, the Vikings had already put in hours of labor. The land and sea demanded their attention, and survival depended on the harvest of both. Hunting, fishing, and foraging were not leisure activities, but necessities that required a deep understanding of nature's rhythms and a tireless work ethic. After a morning of effort, the midday feast wasn't about indulgence. It was about sustenance, reward, and the strength needed to continue. The Vikings, masters of their environment, might have fished the icy waters for herring or cod, bringing home fish that would provide valuable protein. Alongside their catch, wild game, elk, boar, or even reindeer might have been prepared over the fire. The skillful hunt not only provided nourishment, but reinforced their connection to the land. Every successful hunt was a victory, an affirmation of their resilience. Root vegetables, carrots, turnips, and cabbage would have been dug up from the frost-covered soil, their earthy flavors grounding the meal in the landscape. These hardy plants could survive the frigid climate, offering vital nutrients to bolster the body for the tasks ahead. Alongside these staples, Vikings would gather wild berries, herbs, and mushrooms, their vibrant colors marking the fleeting moments of summer amidst the harshness of winter. The midday meal was a powerful reminder of the Vikings' adaptability, the fruit of their labor. It wasn't a quick snack or a processed convenience. There was no such thing. The food was hard-won, cultivated by sweat and skill, rewarding the Vikings with a meal that grounded them in the reality of their world. The effort that went into each bite created a deeper appreciation for the food itself, turning every meal into an affirmation of their survival. Today, meals are often quick, packaged, and devoid of that same labor. The ease of modern food has distanced us from the sense of effort that makes each meal meaningful. The Vikings, however, knew that nothing was given. They worked for everything, and in doing so, they earned a sense of pride and resilience we can only imagine. Cheese, milk, and the power of preservation. In the Viking world, dairy wasn't just a luxury, it was a cornerstone of survival. With the harsh, unpredictable winters and limited access to fresh food, the Vikings turned to their livestock, especially cows and goats, for a vital source of nutrition. Milk, butter, and cheese provided them with essential fats and proteins that sustained them through long months when other food was scarce. But dairy's role went beyond immediate nourishment. It was about preservation. Without refrigeration, the Vikings relied on the art of fermentation and drying to extend the life of their dairy products. Cheese, in particular, was a vital preservation method. By turning fresh milk into cheese, the Vikings could store it for weeks or even months, ensuring they had a reliable food source even when the harsh winter made fresh produce inaccessible.
Butter, too, could be preserved by churning and storing it in cool, dry conditions, ready to be used when needed. These preservation techniques were born from necessity, showcasing Viking ingenuity in the face of limited resources. They understood the land and the seasons and used every available tool to secure their survival. Fermentation wasn't just a method of extending shelf life, it was an essential part of Viking resilience, ensuring that food was available throughout the year, no matter the conditions outside. Contrast this with the convenience of modern refrigeration. Today, dairy products can be stored for weeks, and we often take for granted the ease of access to fresh food. But the Vikings didn't have the luxury of cold storage or supermarket aisles stacked with processed goods. Their survival depended on careful planning, resourcefulness, and the ancient techniques of fermentation and preservation that we've largely forgotten in our modern age. In this, we can find not just admiration, but inspiration, reminders of the creative solutions needed for survival in a world without convenience. The Viking banquet. For the Vikings, a feast was more than just a meal. It was a statement, a celebration of survival, victory, and the strength of the community. Feasts were held in great halls, where long wooden tables were laden with meats, bread, cheese, and ale. These gatherings weren't simply about food, they were about solidarity, camaraderie, and reinforcing the bonds that held Viking society together. A successful raid, a harvest, or a seasonal change was often marked with a feast where warriors, farmers, and families gathered to share in the fruits of their labor. The act of eating together was sacred. It symbolized unity, the sharing of a collective experience, and the recognition of the hard work that sustained the community. At these feasts, stories were told, songs were sung, and oaths were sworn. They weren't just filling their stomachs, they were strengthening the social fabric of Viking life. Food, in this context, became a powerful tool for fostering resilience and legacy. It reminded the people of their shared struggles, triumphs, and the necessity of cooperation for survival. Contrast this with modern society, where meals often occur in isolation. In the age of quick takeout, microwave dinners, and solitary lunches at our desks, the communal aspect of dining has been largely lost. Today, many of us eat in front of screens, disconnected from the people around us and from the rituals of sharing a meal. The Viking feast, in its essence, was a celebration of connection, the kind that we, in our fast-paced world, often overlook. In Viking times, the feast wasn't just about nourishment. It was a deep acknowledgement that survival depended on community. It was a reminder that individual strength is forged through collective effort, a lesson that feels increasingly relevant in a world that often prizes isolation over unity. The Viking banquet wasn't only about food, it was about honoring the shared struggle of being human together. The importance of preservation. In the Viking world, preservation wasn't just a convenience, it was a matter of life and death. The harsh winters left little opportunity for fresh food, and the Vikings had to rely on their ingenuity to make sure they had enough sustenance to survive. To navigate the long, cold months, they became masters of preservation techniques, salting, drying, and fermenting. These methods weren't just practical, they were essential for the survival of entire communities.
Salting was perhaps the most widely used preservation method. By curing meat and fish with salt, the Vikings could extend their shelf life for months, if not longer. Salt was a precious resource, often traded or harvested from coastal regions, and was vital in preserving fish like herring, which could be kept throughout the year. Similarly, drying meat and fish helped to preserve both the protein and the valuable nutrients essential for survival. The Vikings would carefully hang their catch over fires or in cool, dry places, ensuring that it would last through the freezing cold of winter. Fermentation was another key technique. Whether it was for vegetables, fish, or dairy, fermentation allowed the Vikings to store food for months and even years. This not only preserved food, but enhanced its nutritional value. Fermented foods like sauerkraut and pickled fish were staples of their diet, adding essential vitamins and minerals to an otherwise limited winter pantry. Fermentation also made food easier to digest, a crucial factor when fresh food was scarce. Today, refrigeration and packaging have removed the necessity of such preservation techniques. Most of us can walk into a grocery store and find fresh produce year-round, completely disconnected from the effort that once went into preserving food. But in the Viking era, preservation was not just a practical skill, it was a powerful survival strategy, a testament to the resilience and resourcefulness of the people. The wisdom of these ancient methods still resonates today, with modern sustainability movements calling for a return to traditional food practices. The Vikings' ability to preserve what the land offered is more relevant than ever. Their techniques, born from necessity, can now empower us to live more consciously and sustainably. Could you endure a Viking diet? Imagine waking up in a small, drafty longhouse, the cold biting at your skin as the first light of dawn peeks through the cracks in the wooden walls. The day ahead is long, and survival is never guaranteed. There's no convenience store down the street, no fast food chain to grab a quick meal. Instead, you have to rely on your own resourcefulness, the food you've stored, and the land you've worked tirelessly to cultivate. This is the world of the Viking, where every day was a struggle and every meal was a victory. Breakfast isn't a quick bowl of cereal or a cup of coffee. It's a laborious task of grinding grains by hand, preparing a hearty porridge from barley or oats. This simple meal is the fuel that will carry you through the grueling hours of physical labor that lie ahead. The rest of the day is filled with tasks that demand strength, endurance, and resilience. There's hunting to be done, fishing in icy waters, or perhaps foraging for wild berries and vegetables. Every task is a challenge, and every meal is earned through hard work. But even after all this effort, there's no guarantee of abundance. The Vikings knew that failure, whether it was a failed hunt, a poor harvest, or bad weather, meant starvation. There were no quick fixes, no convenient solutions. They had to make do with what they had, often turning to dried fish, salted meats, and fermented vegetables to get by. So, could you survive on a Viking diet? Could you endure the physical and mental strain of a life built on constant effort and adaptation? It's easy to romanticize the past, but the reality was harsh. The Vikings didn't have the luxury of modern conveniences, and their resilience was born out of necessity. They didn't have energy drinks to power through the day or ready-to-eat meals to fall back on. Instead, they relied on their physical strength, their knowledge of the land, and their mental toughness to survive. In our modern world, it's hard to imagine living like that. But the question remains, if placed in the Viking shoes, could we endure the same trials? Could we live without the comforts we take for granted? This challenge is not just about food, it's about resilience, survival, and the strength of the human spirit. The Vikings lived with the constant knowledge that their survival was never guaranteed, and that raw, unyielding effort was the price of life. Would you be willing to pay it?
The legacy of Viking resilience. The Vikings were more than just fierce warriors. They were survivalists, masters of self-sufficiency and resourcefulness. Their ability to endure harsh conditions, adapt to their environment, and make the most of limited resources is a legacy that still resonates today. In a world dominated by convenience and instant gratification, their lifestyle seems almost foreign, yet it offers invaluable lessons for modern life, especially as we face growing environmental challenges, societal instability, and personal crises. Today, movements like eco-minimalism and survivalism echo the very principles that kept the Vikings alive. The Vikings didn't rely on technology or mass production. They used their knowledge of the land, their physical strength, and their ingenuity to survive. They understood the cycles of nature and worked in harmony with it, often making do with what was available to them. This mindset of reducing waste, being self-reliant, and finding strength in simplicity is exactly what many are trying to reclaim today. By learning from Viking resilience, we can become more adaptable, more self-sufficient, and more in tune with the natural world. We can take control of our own survival, whether it's through growing our own food, preserving what we have, or learning to live without the excesses we've come to depend upon. The Vikings didn't have the luxury of choice. They had to adapt to survive. But we have the power to choose resilience, and in doing so, we can confront modern challenges with the same strength and determination that once saw the Vikings through their darkest days. The lessons they left behind can empower us to face our own struggles, whatever they may be.
What a Viking ate, and what you could learn. As we've journeyed through the Viking diet, we've not only explored the foods they consumed, but the deeper lessons embedded in their way of life. The Vikings didn't just survive, they thrived through resilience, ingenuity, and an unshakable bond with the land. Their diet was shaped by necessity, but it also reflected a mindset of self-reliance and resourcefulness that goes beyond what we eat. It's about how we live. The Viking way teaches us that survival isn't just about food. It's about the ability to adapt, to plan, and to work in harmony with nature. In today's world, where convenience often trumps sustainability, we can learn a great deal from the Viking approach to life. The choices we make in how we produce, preserve, and consume food are powerful reflections of the world we wish to create. By embracing practices of preservation, foraging, and self-sufficiency, we can make strides toward a more sustainable future. The Vikings didn't just survive the harshest conditions, they left behind a legacy of resilience. As we reflect on their diet, we're reminded that we too can choose resilience in our own lives. In a fragile modern world, we have the power to adapt and create strength through our daily choices. What the Vikings ate is less important than how they lived, how they embraced hardship and thrived in spite of it. And in that spirit, we can ask ourselves, how can we learn from their resilience to leave our own legacy of survival and strength?